Recording in progress.
Business. Yeah, we're in business. It's over here still. All right. Okay. Here we go. Hello, everyone. This is Chuck Tironi, Reading Conservation Administrator, pursuant to state legislation superseding certain provisions of the open meeting law. General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, relating to the COVID-19 emergency. This February 28, 2024 public meeting of the Reading Conservation Commission shall be open to the public and held virtually using Zoom. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. All materials are available at the following link, which I will provide in the chat. And Martha Moore, Conservation Chair, will facilitate this meeting. Please note there will be a public comment period for each hearing. Each vote taken tonight will be by roll call, and we'll begin with roll call attendance and review the agenda. So Martha, can you please take that over?
Okay, let's start with members that are on Zoom. Can you say yes when you are called on? Bill?
Bill McCants, member present.
Walter?
See him.
Is Walter off the screen, or is he?
Let me check where he's at. Oh, let me get Walter back in the meeting and.
Hello, Walter, we're taking roll call attendance. Are you there?
I am here, not picture wise, but I'm here working. on
Okay,
it.
great. All right, Andrew,
Andrew Driven, member present.
Tony,
Tony Woodalakis, member present.
Brian,
Brian Rowe, vice chair present.
Martha Moore, chair present. Okay, and our agenda tonight, the first two hearings are going to be continued. We need to vote for Pinevale, but we have already voted about Zero Small Lane. We will have a hearing on Walnut Street, and then we have a few old and new business, including revising the tree policy and violation notices, mentioning the MACC Annual Environmental Conference on March 2nd. We'll have an update on Simon's Way by Andrew Driven. We'll talk about the rules for Bear Meadow and other conservation lands and whether we need to revise those rules, and some other minor business. And we'll be doing it in that order.
Okay, so first item, we have the.
And we're starting at 7:09.
Sure, so the first item on the agenda has been continued to May 22nd. The second item on the agenda is continued to March 13th.
But I think we need to vote on that.
Yes, and that needs a vote.
I move that we continue the hearing for 252, 262 Main Street in Pinevale Ave
This is Brian, seconded.
to March 13th, 2024.
Bill, can you start the voting?
Yep, Bill McCants in favor.
Tony, are you, Walter, are you there?
Yes, I am. Walter in favor. Walter Talbot in favor.
Andrew Dugan in favor, Tony Rodalakis in favor.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. We voted 6-0-0 to continue to March 13th. 246 to 248 Walnut Street. Do we have anybody here representing them? Doesn't look like it.
Yeah.
Or is that Ray?
I'm gonna try Ray, but I'm not sure.
There was some conversation about the person was actually going to be not available for tonight's meeting,
vacation.
but we were gonna finish up the meeting anyway.
Right.
Yeah, but they were here and
Oh.
they were supposed to. So is there any explanation that's needed? I have,
Brian had requested calculations be double checked on the figures and updated.
Okay, before we go into any further, let me read the blurb. Okay, 246 to 248 Walnut Street, open the public hearing on a notice of intent filed by Stella Construction pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act and/or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1. The applicant is proposing construction of a 2-lot subdivision with an associated 150-foot paved private way partially within the riverfront area and buffer zone associated with a bordering vegetated wetland. The application and plans can be viewed during regular business hours at the Town Hall Conservation Office, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Mass. 01867, and on the Conservation Division page under the project by year, Assessor's Map 3, Lot 19, DEP file number 270-0781. Okay. Any luck?
yeah. So here's the plan. And the calculations are right here and give me a second to get everything out of the way and show everybody what we're looking at. Can everyone see that?
I think it is much bigger.
Can you zoom just a little bit more, Chuck?
Sure can.
So we don't have anyone from the applicant speaking?
No, we're just, I'm looking because I did see beginning of the meeting, but not now.
Yeah, so
I don't think it's Ray though. Find out if it's Ray.
Whose phone?
No. So it was Jeffrey Brem that was doing this project and we asked him to provide these calculations for Brian.
He was on earlier.
Yeah.
I saw his name earlier.
Yeah, something must have happened and so these calculations, I don't know if you want to go over them, Brian, but
So quickly, the question was whether or not they adhered to the riverfront regulations, the idea being that you can develop up to 10% of the riverfront area and it's cumulative. So if you're already over, you don't get any additional benefit. It would then require you to go to either F or G of the regulations, restoration or mitigation. So what he did, he went back to clarify that the original numbers were wrong and these numbers are correct. It still shows him over the 10%, which steers them to F or G, and they have chosen
they're mitigating.
mitigating, right? I'm going to be sure they're mitigating.
Yeah.
So That puts them in compliance if they mitigate enough, which they did.
And that mitigation includes the bridge over the Sturgis stream, that kind of thing?
They have a bridge, so they're doing some restoration planting. They're gonna be removing some invasives. And they're going to donate a piece of property to the Conservation Commission. And then upstream from where this location is at Sturgis Park, they've said that they will install a bridge, which is part of the 2013 Sturgis Park Master Plan, to create a walking trail and to get a bridge built there so they can provide this path along the park. So that's their mitigation for this project. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I'm gonna try to dial it back down.
So that's 4 different areas that they're gonna be mitigating. The land donation, the
It's the
invasives,
same watershed.
the planting, and the bridge. So that's a lot of different ways they're mitigating this
Mhm.
project. Okay.
And so we also asked them to, this area right here, there was a concern that the water coming down this road and off the cul-de-sac would come down the driveway and spill out and make its way across to the other property, right in this area here, in this lower area. They did not put in that little berm at the end of the driveway. And it was one of the discussion points that I did want to bring up with Jeffrey tonight. But I was talking to Ian, who's another engineer, and at the site, and he said that he didn't know if that was something that can be done. So there was a discussion that was needed about that.
Did he say why it might not be able to be done?
He was concerned about the water being blocked, but I think so the whole idea is to keep the water on your property and not have it spill onto the road and vice versa. So the road water shouldn't go onto your property. So this is just a flat area coming straight through there. And in other cul-de-sacs, the town usually requires some sort of separation, and it might be a hump or a berm in that area. So that's why I asked for it. Here's Jeffrey right now. So let's see what he says. And
Do you need to click admit?
yeah. I'm gonna turn it back. I'm gonna find Jeffrey and I'm gonna make him co-host.
Thank you. Oh my God, that was difficult. I don't know how long you were looking for me, but something happened and I disappeared. I'm sorry.
Sounds good. I'm gonna pull up the plans. That's all right?
Okay.
Okay.
I think I just did.
Oh, you're doing that? Sure.
Yeah, I did that. And so there's the plans. Let me just clear out this. All right, hello, everyone. For the record, my name is Jeffrey Brem for the applicant, Stella Construction. I'm not sure if the applicant is online because I was off, but I know the landowner Ray is here. At last we met, we had a few little items to do on the plan. We did them and submitted it, so I just want to go over that with you. Here they are. Here, do you see a list or do you see the plans? I always forget
List.
which one.
The
You see the
list,
list,
but it
okay.
would be good to make the list bigger. It's very tiny.
You got it. Let me put that. There we go. Okay. So this is an email to Chuck or me or something, but so it's not formalized, but it has a list here, so I copied it over. So if you recall at the meeting, we had a few items to do. We agreed to put a construction entrance and detail on the plan, and that was done. The red maple, we went back and forth because we picked a couple of red maples that were the cultivars were not necessarily native, so we now just specify that is the red maples that we show on the plan shall be native. And we've corresponded with Bigelow Nurseries. I know Chuck is aware of that as well, and they are available. Alternative analysis table, we had some clarification work to do in the previously disturbed areas, but I will say that the numbers were correct, and the table was slightly clarified. And then a separate landscaping plan was provided, simplified plan, and that you asked for, so it doesn't show everything on one sheet. And then we added a note stating that contractor must keep the street clean in compliance with your order of conditions, your standard orders. That's it. I'll go back to the plan, and it's a pretty short presentation, and I'm here for any questions. And if you didn't know, I'm not in the area. I'm in Nevada right now.
Okay, yeah. You have a question, Andrew?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for all the work you've done on this. I still want to get some clarification. If we could go to the table with the alternative analysis impact.
Sure. I'm going to zoom it up now. Oh, there you go. Okay, there's the table.
Thank you. So I just wanted to get clarification on the same thing we were talking about the last meeting, why the previously disturbed area for alternative A is different from alternative B. Am I missing something? I don't understand why they would be different.
There is work that was previously disturbed that we're not working in at all. So the newly disturbed area is new work that we're disturbing. And then part of the previously disturbed area, we're going to leave natural. That's the difference. And I can show you what those are. So let me zoom on the plan again. Just so you know, there's a black bar that keeps getting in my way. So let me show you where that is. Okay, so where my hand is right there, this whole area here was previously disturbed right there, and we're not working in that area at all. There is another area over here that was previously disturbed that we're not working in as well. And then I believe that's it, right here. So mainly it's this area that was adjacent to the back of the house, and this area that was disturbed before it was counted in the calculations, and we're just not disturbing it, so it's not part of the newly disturbed area.
Okay,
That's the difference.
that's a little tricky.
I know, I didn't know how to do it either, but that's the answer.
But I don't know if you need to. I mean, if you just say there's 26,000 square feet of disturbed land, you're adding on about 2,000 square feet. And per the 1058.5 REDEV regulations, that means you need to mitigate or restore for that 2,000 newly disturbed. That's my understanding of the regulations.
And we are doing that, as you know, we are mitigating that.
That's
At a
what
much-
we were discussing before you joined the phone call. So you've got two restoration or mitigation on site. Are you
We
restoring
have-
those little lots or just mitigating them?
We are removing the invasive species, so that's one thing that we're doing. Let me go to that sheet. In this kind of gray area here, and this gray area here, that's invasive species. We are removing them. We're mitigating at a, I believe it's a 4-to-1 ratio, maybe it's a 3, yeah, 4-to-1 ratio by providing this land here, parcel Z, to the town, donated, no cost. And the third mitigation is an off-site bridge at the town, on town property for the Parks Department. That there's no value associated with it number wise, but we are doing a 4-to-1 ratios.
And you're planting, I think there's 4.
I'm sorry, and we're planting a whole planting schedule that you saw.
Okay. I find the way it's being added up a little more confusing than it needs to be and not quite meeting the regulations.
Oops.
So you're not restoring the land you're just removing the invasive, because restoration has as you know, a different expectation. So if you're not restoring it, you're mitigating it, so that's it's just, I don't want to dwell on the numbers too much, but to me, they don't add up quite right. But you got a lot going on, so maybe it's okay, but it doesn't work for me right now, personally, to meet the 310 CMR 1058.5 redev regulations. At least it's not clearly laid out in the way that meets the regulations. Although to be fair to you, you do have a lot that you're proposing, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Andy. It's hard to show it all in the right way. I know it would have been cleaner, but I don't think it's a clean answer. You could probably do it in multiple different ways, and
Yeah, I mean, we don't have too much riverfront projects that I've come across well, since being on the commission, so it's not something we see often, but yours is definitely addressing it more directly, so that's very much appreciated. But along the line of the regulations, so we're talking mostly about how to the 1058.5E, the 10%, we're over 10%, so you've got 2,000 square feet of new land, and how do we mitigate it or restore for that? But there's also C, so that it says not to get closer than existing, as at least that's what we want. The existing disturbance line, we are pushing, the new development is pushing closer to the river than the existing work that's been done, correct? We are
let's
moving
look at
closer.
I'm going to outline the disturbance line for you. It's, no, you know what? I'm going to zoom up. So the existing disturbance line is, I've lost it. There is a lot of lines on this plan. Here it is right here. There's a distant, it goes like that, and then it goes down here. Right out of page. So there's the existing line right there. So we are working in that zone to further away from the existing line, and over here, the existing line comes up here, and we are working in that zone. Yes.
Sure. So that would mean more
But
mitigation.
I'm sorry, Andy. It's no closer. We're just we're working in the riverfront, but no closer, because none of this work, you know, this is all disturbed previously. So
Where your mouse is right now?
oh, where my mouse is, yes, that's in additional, correct? And that little tiny bit right up here, correct?
Oh yeah, so the other one's not much. So yeah, there's just, okay, that's too bad. And then I guess similar, so D is kind of similar. We don't want to propose the work to be located. Ideally, the work should not be getting any closer to the riverfront, right? That's what the regulations expect and hope for. And similarly to what I was just talking about to C, so this is now D, we are pushing a bit closer to the, I mean, to me, these are reasons why this hasn't been developed like this, because it's hard to meet the riverfront. You know, if we want to follow them strictly, which I prefer to, it doesn't quite meet it. But I know you've had a lot of discussions with Chuck and CPDC and other folks, and the other commissioners might feel differently, but to me, it doesn't.
Well, I think it does, because we meet the 10%, and then we have 7,000 going back to the table. That's why it is confusing, because we are redevelopment, but we also do meet the 10%. So when you said we didn't meet the 10, we have 7,103 square feet allowed, and we're at 7,022 when you take the 3 areas. And that includes a reduction on the previously developed areas. I'm subtracting that out because I'm mitigating those.
Yeah, so just to clarify, for me, I would just take, you have 26,000 square feet of disturbed land. You're adding on the 1920. And that's the number you just need to be working with, not the, so you're off by like 1,000 square feet of mitigation in my numbers.
Jump in?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you're treating that section differently. My understanding is if A through E, if any one of those is violated, then, so it's if then. And if they violate one of those A through E or 5 of the A through E, either way, they then have to do restoration or mitigation according to the specified ratios. So the 10% is already an issue. Based on that alone, they have to do the mitigation, which they're doing. So the 100 feet, I actually agree with you, but it doesn't matter because they've already done the tripwire. So they're already into mitigation.
But then it's the question of how much mitigation are we expecting? Yeah, I agree with you, but I'm talking about,
And that's square footage, right?
yeah, we're all in agreement that they are mitigating and they've tripped it, regulations, but it's just how much mitigation are the regulations expecting?
I'm
and
pretty
then-
sure it expects 2-to-1 ratio in one part and 3-to-1 in another part. And we're providing 4-to-1 just in the parcel Z donation, not including the work we're doing, the tree planting and the bridge. So I think when you add it all up, we exceed the requirements. That's where I'm coming from.
I think you might be right. But I just like seeing all the numbers in one table adding up properly in a way that makes sense, and I don't see that in front of me right now.
Well, I want to close this. So, and I think we're all okay with it. How do you want to address that? Because I could obviously supplement that prior to the work starting.
Yeah,
That's what you want.
All right, Tony had his hand up earlier. Bill has his hand up now. Can I move on, Andrew?
Yep.
Okay,
I'll yield.
defer to Bill.
Defer to Bill.
Okay, Bill.
I just want to say that based on other projects I've seen and what I saw from the circuit rider presentation on Riverfront within the past year, this is an extraordinary amount of mitigation, particularly the land donation, which, you know, isn't even contemplated in the examples Northeast region gives because it's so rare. So I just wanted to give another perspective to the applicant. That's my perspective. Thank you.
Anybody else? Tony, you're all set. Okay, Chuck.
I have an unrelated question. That lot, I think it's lot 1, lot 2, I don't know, the lower lot, screen south. I did ask for a berm just at the driveway. I didn't see that was installed. Ian said that it might have been an issue to install a berm, but what's your explanation? It's just to keep the water on the site, either on the lot or off the lot.
I think you guys, we talked about the flow coming down. Follow my hand now. It's going to come into this catch basin. Flow, all this cul-de-sac is going to get into this catch basin. You are right. There's a little bit of flow right where my hand is, and it really is right, that little triangle that would come down the road. And I think what somebody asked was the berm. I don't think you want to call it a berm, just the pavement raising up a little bit so that it allows it to flow into this double grade catch basin.
Sure, and you're
So
providing.
I don't call it a berm, but just a grade change, and we could do that. I would expect maybe you could do that in the condition.
Okay.
Okay. We also, do you have other things, Chuck?
That was the only.
Okay. I know you had said you're gonna remove the knotweed patch. And I think if it requires any sort of herbicide to get the knotweed under control, I would like to see it be either cut and dab or injection and done by a licensed applicator to control that knotweed so that we have minimal overspray of herbicides.
Yep, that's no problem. And I agree with you. Should be cut and dab.
All right. And we also haven't specified a deadline for when the bridge will be built and the land will be transferred. I'm going to suggest that we make those both prior to the occupancy permit, Would that work for you?
It would. Thank you for not doing it to the building permit. I appreciate that. Thank you. No problem.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other things, Chuck, or members of the commission? Okay, how about any members of the public who are here listening to this meeting? Are there any members of the public with comments? Susan,
So they're gonna,
oh, first introduce yourself.
Susan Bowe, 15 Brewer Lane, Reading resident. So they're gonna deal with the Japanese knotweed. Are they gonna continue to maintain the removal? Or just a one-time deal?
It's gonna be the backyard of that house, right up against the house. So I think it will be continued once it's gotten rid of. It'll be lawn after that.
So.
But she's right. I mean, sometimes the Japanese knotweed continues to grow, and so you probably should have a long-term condition in there.
3,
3 years.
At least 3 years.
okay.
Yeah,
So do you want to make it 5 then, since that's the number I was here about Japanese knotweed?
I think 5 would probably be a good idea.
Makes sense to you, Chuck?
Sure, 5 is what we've done in the past. Typically, it's 3 years, so it's, you know, and it is the lawn, so 3 to 5, I'm good with.
Can we more broadly specify exotic invasives? Case something like, I don't know, a tree of heaven starts growing in there or something,
Garlic mustard.
garlic mustard.
Sure, we can do that. I think there might be some education needed for the new homeowners, but if it comes in. But we'll do that.
If it's not grass, they can remove it.
And it might know to be something besides grass grown.
That's a good point, because it's a shaded area. The grass is probably not going to necessarily be robust.
So if something else takes advantage of all that nice open space now.
So we ready?
Understood.
Okay, so you've got that, Chuck?
I do, I have 3 conditions.
All right. Anybody else need anything else, or can we move on? Okay. Do we have a motion? I think we're looking for a motion to close.
This is Brian. I make a motion to close 242 Walnut.
246 to 248.
46 to 40. Excuse me.
Second.
Bill McCann's in favor.
Walter Talbot's in favor.
Andrew Driven, and I'm gonna abstain.
Tony Rodolakis in favor.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. 5 in favor, Andrew abstaining. We need another motion.
Now let's discuss
Oh.
the conditions first, just to make
Okay.
sure we get them right. So I have removed the knotweed patch and monitor that for
5 years.
5 years. And there'll be a report presented to the Conservation Commission every spring, say April 1st.
Okay,
And to be done by a licensed applicator.
Yeah,
April 1st is kind of an odd time because nothing's coming up in April.
do you want to change that? June 1st?
June 1st sounds better.
Okay, June 1st. There'll be a grading change at the lower lot, which
Lot 2.
lot 2. The licensed applicator will control the exotic invasives on lot 1. That's all that as we showed. And the land bridge, the land and the bridge will be finalized. That donation and that bridge project will be built prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit, and the bridge will be built to specifications that we were sent on the plan, the latest plan, approximately 6 foot wide with railings, 12 to 14 foot long, but long enough to span the banks and then have a little bit extra, like 2 feet, and there'll be a ramp at either end. So that's what we're looking for, and it'll be supported by its own concrete piers.
Okay,
And so that's all approved. So that's no new approval for that work at Stokes Park. It's going to be part of this project.
Okay, anything else? We ready for a motion to issue?
Yep.
Do we have anybody making a motion?
This is Brian. I make a motion to issue for 246 to 248 Walnut Street with the conditions we just listed.
This is Tony, a second.
Bill McCants in favor?
Walter Talbot's in favor.
Again, I'm gonna abstain, but Jeffrey, thank you. This is a very complete. I just want the numbers to add up in a way that makes sense.
Understood, Andrew.
Tony Rodalakis in favor.
Brian Moore in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. 5-0 with Andrew abstaining. Okay,
Okay, I'm gonna leave, I guess. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, thank
I'm
you.
going back to Vegas, see if I can lose some more money. Thank you.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, our next order of business refers to the tree policy. And Chuck, would you be able to put that up on the screen for us? Here is the existing tree policy, and I would like to propose that we add the words "or conservation fund" in the places that are highlighted in yellow in our tree policy, so that the applicants who want to have an alternative way of if they can't plant trees on the property where they have to take trees down, there are 2 places they can donate to and not just one. Any discussion?
I think it's great.
Andrew?
So you think it's a conflict of interest to have the money go directly to the conservation fund, which we have? Wasn't that the idea of the shady, my understanding, because this predates me, the Shady Tree Fund went to a fund that we couldn't touch.
I just laugh when someone says shady, but it's shady.
Nothing shady about it.
It has nothing to do with the fact that we can't touch it. That's not the reason why that fund was used. That fund was available. We have no control over it. This money should be used on conservation land for trees, tree replacement, tree evaluation. We're gaining that control back. We're not supposed to be separated from this money.
So it's not anything. We couldn't buy a bike rack with it, for example.
Yeah.
It's tree related one way or another.
And is the tree policy clear on that, that it can only be spent on tree related items?
The conservation fund is, there's a note in the accounting description for this.
Right.
Any other questions or comments? Any members of the public with comments? Okay. Seems like we can make this a quick discussion. Do we have a motion to approve this change to the Shade Tree Fund policy?
You should have said, that's why we're making the change.
This is Brian, to make a
From the
motion
Tree Fund.
to change the tree policy as we just discussed.
This is Bill McCants, I'll second. And Bill McCants in favor?
Walter Talbot's in favor.
I'm a grump today. No, sounds like a conflict of interest to me.
Okay, so Andrew, no.
Tony Rodalakis in favor.
Brian Moore in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. So 5 in favor, 1 no, and 0 abstaining this time. And Andrew is the no vote. Okay. Any comments on violation notices, progress we've made, anything like that?
So the violation notice went out to 51 Cross Street. Just give some dates and we'll do some follow-up site visits at that time. The pond was frozen. Not going to take the time to show the pictures, but the pond was frozen and, you know, you can't see through ice. So we'll go back when that water level's lower and we'll see what else is in the pond, if anything. And just talked about doing some cleanup and reporting back to the Conservation Commission. It was a violation notice, which is not an enforcement order. So based on our site walk with the applicant, with the landowner, the commission felt like the notice would be enough to keep this project moving forward and having that cleanup happen.
Okay, have we made any progress with any of the other violation notices? Nothing else yet, okay. All right, and 50 Azalea Circle, I believe you said has been withdrawn, so we don't have to discuss that.
That's true.
Okay, all right, the annual conference for Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions comes up on March 2nd. And if any of the members of the Conservation Commission are interested and available to go, I highly recommend it. There are some great workshops and opportunities, and they often offer some of the fundamentals classes if people haven't taken those. I unfortunately have a conflict that day, but if anybody wants to go, talk to Chuck about getting registered and reimbursed for your expenses for going.
Sure. As a matter of fact, at this point, you'd probably register and go through the whole process and then just get a receipt. Now, we'll work on the reimbursement part of it.
Okay, yeah, it's like 4 days from now.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you have a chance, I recommend it. Okay, Andrew, did you want to talk about Simon's Way?
Yeah, we are putting together our summary. And at the last meeting, we talked about how we want to summarize and present to the select board. And I wanted to run by you all. So most of the other people representing them are just kind of not, we'll put the report together, and then once we like it, we'll put it in front of the select board. But first I thought maybe I would present it to you all as a draft before we go to the select board. But just as it's going to be an open-ended recommendation in terms of the existing, the initial charge for that little site next to Simon's Way is very constrained by the wetlands, by the what will hopefully be future conservation land. You can't put much there. So most of our sites is looking at what can we do behind Burbank in addition to the land that we bought. So we're looking at it, is it a single use thing like a community center or pickleball, or is it a multi-use thing, which is going to be a bigger structure and cost more money and might need a private public partnership, or dog park, how do we fit that in there? And then there's also the need for more fields by the recreation, some just open fields. So we're going to put together as a narrative, the pros and cons of approaching them in different ways. But there is a lot of conservation jurisdictional land around there. I think more so compared to some of the other folks that are representing their committees, that maybe they just figured that they'll address it when it comes before their commission rather than at this point in time. So I don't know if there's things that you really want to make sure we get into the final review before it goes to the select board, and the best way to get that from you. I think we want to move this forward. So I think we meet in enough that I could probably put the draft before you all, before we go to the select board, but I also don't want to be slowing down SWEC
It would be great to get an opportunity to look that over before it goes to the select board, and certainly at least back to the SWEC and then to the select board.
Yeah.
After our review.
But you've been very involved, so I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. It's almost like on a 40B dealing with the with the zoning board when they eliminated never mind getting into all that, but it's a good way to kind of get our top 10 out there and have some chance to review it. So okay.
So can that come to the next meeting, the
We have,
March meeting?
it probably won't be the next one. We aren't meeting until SWEC is meeting. I lost it. I'll have to let you know. It will not be the next meeting. It'll
Okay.
probably be in a month from now.
Maybe the second meeting in
Yeah.
March? Okay. I love the idea of having it come by us before it goes to the select board for them to make decisions, and then we turn around and say, oh, sorry, you can't
Yeah.
do that after all.
And we're not making those kind of recommendations, but I think that makes sense. So, all right, that's the plan then.
Okay,
Right?
any other questions?
No, I mean, just as we're thinking it through, looking at that, do you have anything that comes to mind that I should make sure or you just want to wait till I show you the presentation and then you could chat? Might be better then. If there's anything you want, just email me so that I could try to get it in now before we get too far along.
Yes, I know that you've talked about a lot, so it might be better to just review your draft so we can focus on,
What we're talking about.
yeah, where the committee is at this moment.
All right, sounds good.
And I'm assuming you're making sure they're aware of the 35-foot no structure zone and stuff like that when they're making their plans.
Well, in the little swab of land, yeah, I mean, that's been out there from
Yeah.
the initial engineering report.
Good.
But I think there's if we do pursue the land behind Burbank, I'm not sure how that all fits together. So I think one of the recommendations would be to get a planner, and if that's the route the select board thinks makes most sense, we need to survey the land more around there, because there's vernal pools that are on the maps that we need to make sure are, I guess, still active and but yeah, so.
Okay. Public comment?
I'm curious, how much land is there that you're talking about? If you're thinking about developing the land behind Burbank?
The land that I'm most interested in is the gravel lot that's behind, that's currently used serving as parking behind the ice arena.
Okay.
But there has been talk of a dog park going in a sliver of the open space. Yeah, but once because that's the most buildable site of that whole area. But then you need parking, so the parking is gonna be going into the.
But just
somewhere else.
how big is that area?
I don't know. It's big enough to put a pool and a hockey rink.
Okay,
And just for the sake of the minutes, that was Susan Bowe again. Susan Bowe spoke earlier, and that was Susan Bowe again, who didn't reintroduce herself. Okay. All right. All right, anything else on SWEC?
Nope.
Okay. All right, next on the order of business is updating the rules for Bear Meadow and other conservation lands around town. And the last set of regulations for conservation land is dated August 16th, 2008. And Brian and I took a look at possibly making some revisions and updating that. And do you have anything to put up on the screen for us?
You know, I don't think I grabbed that. As a matter of fact, I could go and get it.
But I'm not asking for the 2008, but do you have?
Not even your revisions. I don't think I have those either.
Oh, okay.
But you know what? You know what I can do? Are they up on the website? I think we even did
No,
that.
I looked for them today. They weren't up there.
No, I found them on the website.
Oh, you did?
Okay, let's
I
go.
did. Conservation Division website. I saw them before the meeting tonight.
Okay. I have a lot of trouble navigating that website. I hope, that doesn't sound too silly, but I looked today and did not find them, but I think it's frustrating to me that it's division and commission, and there's two different websites for the two different parts that are both called conservation. So.
So I'm just gonna find it while you guys keep talking. 'Cause it might take a few minutes.
All right, and before I keep talking, I was just gonna say, we have a whole row of people sitting here, and usually there's a sign-in sheet where people who sign in can
Oh, thank you.
identify who they are.
Yeah.
And I only know who one of you are. Are you all here for this Bear Meadow issue?
Right,
All right, so can you identify yourself, please?
I'm Jean Lennox,
Okay,
Lenox.
okay, and
I'm Doug Webb.
Doug Webb, okay. And you are,
Donna Barnes,
okay. Spell your first name,
Donna with an N on the end.
okay.
and Jen Hillary is on her way.
Okay, but she's not here yet. So when she gets here, she can sign in. Okay. All right, so, don't know how to start introducing this.
So I can jump in first.
Sure.
So in prepping for the conversation Martha and I were gonna have, I looked at two perspectives. The first thing was I took a lead from our own colleague, Bill McCants, and I went and looked at surrounding towns to see what, or how they handled it, what kind of language they had. And I looked at Wilmington, Woburn, Melrose, Burlington, Trustees of Reservation, Lexington, and Massachusetts Wildlife Management Areas, Middleton. And to summarize it, the majority of them have dogs on leash only. Some of them have specified areas where it's whatever, on leash or not at all, or some free ranging. So there's a variety, although the preponderance is on leash only. So then I went and looked online for any number of studies or reports or what have you, having to do with the effects of first dogs, dog walking, on conservation areas, on wildlife resource areas and what have you. So what I'll say there first, before I get to the dog thing, I also did the same things for bikes, but let's concentrate on dogs at the moment. So as far as the dogs go, again, there's different studies with different findings, slightly different findings, although, again, the preponderance is that there are some benefits, such as some spreading of seeds. And if they're native seeds and what have you, that can be perceived as good. You have things outside of conservation, like the benefits for human. You have socialization and education of the people about conservation areas. So those kind of positives. As far as the negatives, there's negatives to vegetation and there's negatives to wildlife. In some cases, the vegetation then is indirectly affecting the wildlife. But so the issues with the dogs are they can, first with the wildlife, they can chase wildlife, they can stress wildlife, terrorize wildlife, they occasionally catch wildlife. I haven't seen that very often, but sometimes. So there's three impacts there of wildlife. For example, I found two places where they actually stated some facts. 41% reduction in bird individuals, 31% reduction in species variety. Now that's two different studies. That's not everywhere, but again, it's indicative. Then you have the impacts on vegetation, which the studies call habitat degradation. And part of that is if they are loose and they do something like jump into a vernal pool or things like that. And so there are ways that they can physically affect the habitat. And the biggest is dog waste that gets left behind. And I'm willing to bet that anybody in this room and some others will be saying, but we walk dogs responsibly, we clean up after them and everything. I accept that. I know that. The question I think we have to consider is, are we making rules for that subset, or making rules for everybody, including the people who don't necessarily clean up after their dogs, either because they don't care, or maybe there's a pack of dogs and they don't notice it, or the dog is off leash and going in the woods off trail. So those are considerations. So that's kind of the background that I did that fed into what Martha and I came up with here. And let me just summarize this a little bit, and feel free if I mischaracterize it. So we looked at it as what can we do to protect conservation areas as a whole? We looked to see if there was a particular conservation area that we could be less strict with to allow more free play of dogs in that area. And also, is there an area where we should be stricter for any reason? And that's what brings you to the title of Bear Meadow and conservation areas, because Bear Meadow is one that we gave particular focus to. And from my perspective, it's because in my time on the commission, and it was clear it started well before I got on, there's been an effort by the commission to safeguard Bear Meadow, to keep it as pristine as possible, to protect it as much as possible. That includes things like very strict control of the meadow there being mowed. We have agreements with DPW as to when they can do it, how often they can do it, because that's nesting grounds for birds, for example. So given that the commission views Bear Meadow as a gem, if you will, a jewel in the conservation properties, we felt that it needed additional protection. Fill in any gaps you want.
I think you've been thorough. And I think one reason this has come up is because we have heard reports that there are more dogs going into Bear Meadow than there used to be. And so, you know, it may not have been an issue 5 or 10 years ago, but it has become an issue that people are concerned about protecting, as you say, the jewel in our collection of conservation lands. And we have money we're spending on analysis of how to protect Bear Meadow better. So we want to be conscious of not throwing our money away.
So what Martha's referring to is we commissioned a report, a study by Mass Audubon for ways to bring back Bear Meadow.
Yeah. Okay. Members of the commission, comments, questions? Bill?
Yes, thank you so much for that very thorough background presentation. A few things. One, these kinds of restrictions and the reasoning behind them are very consistent with state and federal conservation lands, parks, etc. If you go to any of those sites and you see why there are policies regarding dogs in particular, but other kinds of pets, very consistent with what Brian shared. I happen to be a fan of dogs. I have been a dog owner in the past, expect to be in the future. But I will say it has distressed me in my time in Reading. We don't have jurisdiction over the town forest, but it's a good example. Many times been in the town forest with dogs that are supposed to be under control of the owner, and they're running free. And I've actually had a dog come up and put its paws on my chest, and the owner, who was far away, said, "Oh, don't worry, he's friendly." So that question about, do we have to worry about, you know, those folks who are less likely to follow the rules? I go with that, because it only takes a few. And sure, that's me, and I have to go home and change my shirt and so forth. But what if it's a wild animal, or the many other things we're trying to protect? So just wanted to make that point. And then in the existing policy, the one from, I think Martha said 2008, it actually lists the possibility of a fine, $100 fine, the previous document. There's no reference here to any kind of enforcement. And I'm not sure, are they supposed to be read together? And how would a person know there could be a penalty? Because again, I go back to the town forest example with, let me be clear, most owners I see, dog owners I see are terrific, but I would put it at 5 to 10% who aren't terrific. You know, you see the dog long before you see the owner. And I think there has to be some kind of mechanism, and there needs to be notice. People need to understand it may be rare that it happens, but that there could be some kind of consequence. And so that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Before I call on Walter, I just want to point out that I don't think these proposed language are meant to replace the policy that was enacted in 2008, but possibly to replace paragraph 13, which is talking about rules about dogs. So I don't think we would get rid of the whole rest of the policy, but just these thoughts incorporated in. So I don't think we would be getting rid of section 14, which has the $100 fine part. That would stay, and some of the other sections, you know. Okay, Walter.
Continue on with what Bill was saying. Dogs don't wear uniforms telling us what shots they've had, what condition they're in, what diseases they're carrying. I've been a dog owner for 50 years, and I agree with Bill. When I walk my dog out in public, I almost feel like I'm taking a risk by other dogs. Yes, it's a small percentage, but it is a percentage that could put a risk to me and my dogs. And frankly, if you don't have your shots, there's also diseases that can be transferred to humans. Thank you.
Before I open it up to the public, any other comments from commissioners?
Yeah.
Andrew?
Well, thanks. You two took this on, or it seems like Brian, you two
We
together?
worked on it together.
Well, so thanks. I know, mostly for town forest, honestly. So it's interesting that it's coming up here. I am curious about why Bear Meadow is getting special treatment. And I do think it would be sufficient to just expect that they have to be on leash in Bear Meadow. And then maybe after this report is done, but I thought the Audubon study already came back with a recommendation saying, keep the dogs out. It's Audubon that's doing the study on Bear, correct? Yeah. I would let it just not pull it out separate, like definitely make sure it's clear that dogs have to be on leash. Maybe we could use some funds to get, you know, like Ipswich has the dog poop bags there to encourage people to pick up their poop. I know that's
So I can
a
answer
phone
your
from a,
question about why would Bear Meadow possibly get special treatment. So as I said briefly before, because we have been treating that way, because we just spent $5,000 or whatever to do the study, presumably we're going to spend additional money to enact some of the recommendations of Mass Audubon. We didn't even talk about bikes yet, but bikes in there, which are already not allowed. But people see bike tracks in there on a regular basis. So these things do degrade the area. Bill and Walter both talked from the human impact and impact of dogs not under control had on them and potentially on their dog. Everything I talked about before was strictly from the perspective of impact on the habitat and the wildlife of the habitat. But, you know, that to me is why we would consider treating it separately, because it has special characteristics. For example, it's one of the only meadows in Reading. It's a place that we have nesting birds. And we learned something from the Audubon person already, which is not even a natural meadow. It's a cultivated meadowland, cultivated meadow, in that it used to be farmland and it has reverted to the current condition, but the water conditions are not able to support a natural meadow. But anyway, it is unique in Reading for that kind of territory, that kind of property. And we have done things there already. We're spending money there. We intend to spend money in the future. Those are reasons in my mind why we might protect it.
And I think I would add that an open meadow would be the most inviting type of a place to take your dog off leash.
I'll admit in public, I have let my dog off leash in that particular area, but so I think it's more about enforcing that letting the dog stay, but in finding a way to enforce that there are, like what Bill was saying, if they are off leash, are there any fines if someone gets caught, but making sure that we try to keep the dogs on leash. And if they pick up behind them, then to me, I think a lot of the conservation, I mean, because then you could say the same about Mallet, and you didn't do it for Mallet Some Oregon, but that's going to be a lot of money. But we're still saying dogs on leash, which I appreciate, will be allowed there. I get that you think Bear Meadow has something to it that other conservation areas do, but unless we're hearing it from a professional saying that keep dogs out, I think would prefer to say dogs stay, but on leash.
Tony?
I could speak to the habitat value of a meadow that's surrounded on sides with forests. The meadow itself is a unique habitat, as Bryant mentioned, relatively unique in the town of Reading. When you have it surrounded by other types of habitats like forest land, that creates an edge, and that's a very special niche that type of a habitat that provides nesting and foraging ground for a very small subset of birds, for example, that can't live in the deep forest and they can't live in the meadow. And so that edge itself is I think highly, it's highly valuable from a habitat standpoint. The other thing I wanted to ask is, if we're talking about leashes, I've seen leashes that are 6 feet long, and I've seen leashes that are much longer than that and retractable. So if it does come down to a leash, I wouldn't like to see people trying to circumvent the intent by putting dogs on a 50-foot leash, for example, that gives them a 100-foot radius.
Andrew?
Just one question about, is there a way, I mean, I haven't gone to Bear Meadow much in the past couple of years, but was there enough paths to literally just keep the dogs out of the meadow proper and still let the dogs throughout the surrounding paths? Would
that could be done? You could come in, say from the Pearl Street, and go in and almost immediately off to the right, and you're going back up into the woods and cut straight ahead of the two meadow areas.
I would get behind if we I'm not behind no dogs in all of Bear Meadow, but if it's really about the meadow proper and the bird habitat there, that I could understand and get behind.
Let's give some, do you have anything, Chuck, or can I open it up to?
Yeah, you could. I just
comment, yeah.
would make a few comments that we'd like to keep Bear Meadow natural. And we'd like to set it aside for wildlife and for those in town and other surrounding towns that want to go and experience of an area that's, although it's not part of the important bird habitat, it is a bird area. It's not noted, in the like on Google or anything like that in the listing, but there's a lot of birds there, and there's woodcock there often, and that's a bird that's very hard to have nest. And we've been lucky to see 2 and up to 3 mating pairs in the meadow. And so we've been lucky with that. But what fears me is the more I walk in town forest is what I fear will happen to Bear Meadow. And me and Brian were just talking about the town forest map, which we're writing all the little spots on that people love and know. And he was telling me that but on this map, it's actually written that dog hole watering number 1 is mixed up with dog hole watering number 2.
That's not exactly correct, but the notation on here is not correct.
Yeah, so it's gone so far that, you know, people understand where these areas are. And we have vernal pools out in here. And I'm just wondering if those are dog hole watering number ones here in Bear Meadow. And those aren't in the meadow. They're just beyond it. And there's one off in the woods if you're gonna head over to more north. So it's an interesting plan to set a piece of property aside and to say, look, this is for birding and this is for walking and hiking, and you're gonna have an opportunity to see maybe something special outside of a collie or, you know, another type of dog, Labrador or something like that. And it should be held above other areas. Now, conservation has a lot of land. There's a lot of open space here in Reading, and this is just one spot. So I'd like to add that to the conversation. I'm not saying that, in all reality, I think that we should have one spot that's safe and secure from dogs. And then when someone's there with a dog and there's some ability to find, that there's no question about it. Like, oh, where are you on the side? Are you in the forest or you're out in the field? How did you get here? Where's the car parked? You know, all that investigation doesn't have to happen. You know, so, but I understand it's gonna be tough. It's, people have pretty much, you know, dogs are loved and they're part of the family and you want to walk around with them. So I think it's great to have the opportunity to talk about it. I don't know where we're gonna go with this, but I know that we can't have it turn into the town forest. So that's my fear.
Okay, it looks like members of the Conservation Commission are still asking to talk. Tony, then Brian, and then I will open it up to the public.
I would just say that we're the Conservation Commission, and I think our charge is to lean on the side of conservation, of biodiversity, of maintaining habitat, of protecting the native species that we have present in Reading, rather than taking on recreation activities. I think between the two, we should side on conservation.
Brian?
This actually was prompted by something Chuck said, which reminded me. It's not as if anybody who might visit Bear Meadow is a resident. When Chuck and I were out there recently because of the build of the pavilion at the top of the community gardens, there was a dog walker coming in, a commercial dog walker with, I'm gonna say 10 dogs, out of town, who was coming to Bear Meadow because the town forest has now gotten crowded. And so that is something we have to consider as well, is that people from out of town will bring their dogs here. And if Bear Meadow is such a nice, inviting place to walk their dogs, they're gonna walk their dogs there. For all the same reasons that we like walking dogs there, we're gonna have other people walking their dogs as well. I come back to, we need to have rules that work for the group, and in the end, there's always gonna be an enforcement problem.
I think it's time to let members of the public speak. I took attendance from the public before and you've arrived since then. Can you just give us your name, please?
Yes, Jennifer Hillary.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Members of the public, would you like to raise your hand? And I know we've been very long-winded, but I would like to limit people to 3 minutes for your initial chance to speak. And depending on how things go, you might get a second chance afterwards. So is there anybody from the public who would like to speak? Yes, and you are Donnan?
Donnan Barnes, 11 Bancroft Avenue.
Okay,
I have some questions. I have 3 questions.
sure.
And I'm sorry if you've covered this at other times. I'm wondering if there are any other conservation areas where dogs are excluded in Reading, other than what you're proposing for Bear Meadow.
You want to answer these questions?
At this point, there are no places their dogs are excluded, and we're only proposing excluding from Bear Meadow. So all the other places in town would still be allowed to bring dogs.
My second question is, hunting is allowed in Bear Meadow now on, there are no trails in the area of Bear Meadow where hunting is allowed. And I'm wondering if you're going to be excluding hunting for the same reasons that you would dogs in Bear Meadow.
We haven't addressed that.
Okay.
Nice thought.
Yeah.
Do you have an answer, Chuck?
No, I was just, so you're saying a deer is like a dog?
No, I'm saying a hunter is like a dog.
No, that's not the case. So hunters are naturalists also, and anything that's hunted is on the, that has a season. Mass Wildlife has determined that there's too many. And so they set a limit, and like Andor, they allow, not only do they allow hunting, but sometimes they have a controlled hunt. And so they end up taking care of more deers than in a different season. But what the problem is with deer is that they eat the herbaceous layer and the shrub layer, and the forest just dies off.
Mhm.
And so hunting is a benefit, and it's actually a way to maintain your the meadow. And again, we'll get the Audubon report, but I don't expect them to say we shouldn't have hunting. I don't see how, a couple hunters, so hunters have to be so far apart and all that. So, and Bear Meadow and that section of Bear Meadow is not so big, so it probably would only be a couple of hunters. Anyway, well, maybe more than a couple, maybe there's 4 or 5, but not much more than that. So 5 people sitting in a tree stand, pretty much being quiet.
Okay.
Blending.
I'm gonna extend the time because we've had a lot of answers and not had a lot of time talk. So I'm gonna give you another couple of minutes.
To extend what I was curious about the hunting, so you're saying that hunters walking around in areas that don't even have trails in them, that's not detrimental to the vegetation?
No, it's not. It's just, so the way a hunter approaches their hunting spot would be to sneak in carefully without causing any disturbance, because they don't want to leave any sign that they're there. So they'll bring their tree stand in, and we have rules on what trees you can put tree stands in early. And then they'll go in early, and they'll be very careful, and they don't want to snap branches or anything like that. And they'll get in the tree stand. So they're very quiet, and they're very, conscientious about the wetland. And some of them are even very conscientious about, walking out and not trying to encounter people, because they understand that there's a rub between people that hunt and hunters. So they'll try to do this early. But I don't agree with anything that you're saying. I think that the hunters don't make, that they walk through the woods quietly without causing disturbance. And there's only a few of them. And hunting deer is probably part of a management plan for this area.
I have one more question. Do I have time for that?
Yes.
So the big question is, how will the dog exclusion be enforced? And I know you've been talking about fines and signs and whatever, but if there's nobody there to say no, how, what are you gonna do? And how is anybody gonna know that it's happening if there's nobody on the site?
Okay, I'll tackle that one.
Okay.
There are certainly lots of people at Bear Meadow, especially during gardening season. And anybody who's parking their car at Matera Cabin and getting out with a dog, there will be people who will witness that. And so I think, as long as we make it notice that you're not supposed to bring dogs, there will be people who will report that somebody has come with a dog. So I'm not really worried about enforcing it. And I think it's got to be publicity that we let people know that there's a change in the plan and that other conservation areas are available for dog walking. The town forest is available for dogs, but not this one property. Okay, so let's move on. Is there anybody else who has public comment?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
All right, Susan Bowe.
Susan Bowe, 15 Brewer Lane. So I challenge all of you to go and do a comprehensive survey and see who actually goes to Bear Meadow, who uses that space. And if you make it this way that we can't bring our dogs, who's going to use it? And I think that you'll find that 90% of the people that go there on a regular basis, I myself go 3 to 4 times a week. And I know the heartbeat of that place. I know the people. I have friendships because of that place. And I very much like Andrew's idea of keeping the meadow where there are a lot of different wildlife. There's a lot of pollinators. You could do a really great job adding a lot of native plants to that area. This is very personal and important to me. And it hurts me that my husband is part of this, and I asked him not to be a part of this conversation, but nevertheless, he is. I want you to know that there are some deer stands that are there illegally that I have reported and that you guys have known about from me and you haven't done anything about it. Weekly, I see bikes going through there and they're not allowed, and that's currently posted. And I don't appreciate you guys saying that you're doing good for this through the Conservation Commission, because you haven't really upheld anything that you've said except for mowing the field. Okay? I personally am a steward of Bear Meadow. Chuck will attest to the fact that I have cleared with him over the years. I've done invasive buckthorn poles. I've done swallowwort poles. I've done mustard poles. I've done bittersweet poles. I've placed barriers to protect native ephemerals that I don't want to be trampled by humans that are looking into the small pond that's in there. I've alerted conservation and the police about bow hunting stands that are still there in illegal areas. That hasn't been addressed. I pick up trash on the trails regularly. I'm a steward. If you don't let me and other people that do good for this community of Bear Meadow go in there, who's gonna enjoy it? That goes back to doing the comprehensive survey of who actually uses this land. How are you gonna control it? And the reason why it's so busy is because of COVID and because the Trails Committee is encouraging people to get out there, right? With all the BS that goes on with the political situation, and it's just a great place to go and clear your head. And it helps your dog, it helps you, it builds community. And yes, it's only one of the places in town, but it's safe, it's convenient, and it is very special. And that's why I personally have been a steward over so many years trying to protect this place.
Thank you. All right, I have notes from that. Who else would like to speak? Okay, and you are?
I'm Jean Lennox. I live on Pearl Street, right across from Bear Meadow. You talk about trying to preserve that there's a lot more people going in there. There's a lot more people going in there because all of a sudden, everyone thinks it's a good idea to put a sign saying Bear Meadow this way. I don't understand if you want to try and preserve, and then the other for Main Street, there's another sign with a big parking lot that's been there for few years. I've lived there since 1994. The past, probably since COVID and now since the sign, I see people, I go over there with my dogs, I have 2 dogs, every day, like 2 or 3 times a day. no issues. I do agree with the dog walkers. I don't like that. Had a run-in with one of them a little while ago. I get that part of it. Everybody's very respectful. They pick up the poop that I see, like I'm over there a lot. Same thing, see people every day, going, the same people. Used to make friends with my kids when they were little, now I'm making friends with people with dogs. Dogs love it over there, and you think about the vernal ponds, what is saying, why is wildlife going to vernal ponds? And the vernal ponds, I think they are too. I mean, I think people are very respectful and keep the dogs out of it. If you guys go over there as much as dog people do, you will see the dog people that are very respectful over there. Like I said, I go over there a lot. I see cars driving down my street. They see the sign. They slow down. The next day I see them again. They bring over the dog. So if you want to stop people going over there or limit it, take down the signs. There's no need for that big advertisement on my street. It's ridiculous. I don't get it. So, and like I said, like certain sections, maybe like he was saying, like little paths to keep people out of certain areas. Fine, but to make this the only place that you were thinking of banning dogs, I think it's so unfair. And what has this town become? Because so unfair. That's all.
Okay,
I've said my piece.
all right,
A
and
lot more.
45 seconds to spare. Okay, reset. Anybody else want to speak? Doug?
Doug Webb, Pearl Street. I have certainly been blessed with the opportunity to walk in Bear Meadow many times. I think probably since I had never been or enjoyed that section of the forest. I'm embarrassed to say I've never even been in town forest till I got my dog. So it was a great opportunity and one of the highlights of Reading, the opportunity to walk a dog in both Bear Meadow and the town forest. I think that it's unfortunate that I think that this whole thing stemmed from the commercial dog walkers getting first banned out of the town forest, which I agree with, and then saying, well, let's just go over to Bear Meadow and we'll destroy that place. I think that it's a big leap going from dogs allowed and dogs off leash to no dogs at all, and it would be a sin. Almost everyone who's in there, certainly when I'm there, is walking a dog. And so it seems to me that the commission is, and I understand the position, it is a conservation commission and not a recreation commission, but all of the data you're collecting is to support your theory of the birds and not any of the theory to support that the dogs are beneficial. And you did make some comment that there are surveys that say that dogs are beneficial to the habitat. I think it would be a slim push. But I don't think that enough has been looked at to see whether or not the negative impacts are as impactful as you think. As you said, you cited that 41% reduction in birds. Well, how much is a reduction in birds if it's just people? Because there's no dogs there by themselves. So if you say that if people are there, there's a 37% reduction in the birds, then you're only going to account 4% of that to the dogs. 31% reduction in species. I don't know whether or not you have, anybody has any actual information on how many of the nesting birds in the meadow were before the dog population increased there and how many there are now. But I know that when I walk my dog, he's not out eating bird eggs. So it would be upsetting. It would be too bad to lose that opportunity. And I think it's one of the assets of Reading is the opportunity to be there. And the survey I did, 100% of my people that I saw with dogs and without dogs would be very sad if there weren't dogs. A lot of them go there to walk just to see dogs. Again, sometimes you have to write rules for the 1 or the 2 or the 5%. We don't take into account the 2 or 5% of the hunters that are lousy, but we'll take into account the 1 or 2 or 5% of the dog walkers that are not following the rules. And that's true.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Okay, Jennifer?
Thank you, Jen Hillary, Hillcrest Road. I first want to thank you all for your work on the Conservation Commission. It's very important work, and I have seen over the past 4 years the good work that you've all done with the community gardens and now the construction of the pergola. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. I also would like to echo what's been said. I appreciate Mr. Driven's recommendation of maybe considering no dogs in the actual meadow area of Bear Meadow, but I would be very disheartened if dogs were restricted from the whole property itself. I am a woman. I feel safe going in there with my dog. I understand Reading is safe, but having my dog with me allows me to enjoy these beautiful recreational areas that we have. So if dogs were not allowed, I certainly would not be going weekly as I do. My husband also goes weekly. My children, through their schools of their own volition, have both been involved in efforts to clean up Bear Meadow and the town forest, which I'm very proud of. So I consider my family a small steward of this space as well. And I would say the majority of dog owners that I see, their dogs are staying on the trails the same way humans would. And certainly there are once in a while a dog that goes off to sniff something off trail in the same way a child would go off trail to check something out. But most dogs stick to the human-made trails. And again, I think it does become difficult from a enforcement perspective when there are different rules for different open spaces and land. I understand that your charge as the Conservation Commission is different from those who govern the town forest, but I do think consistency benefits both organizations and helps with enforcement and helps humans, who are ultimately the ones in charge of their dogs in these spaces, become better rule followers, so to speak. So I hope that there is a potential middle ground for doing the work that we want to do in terms of conserving the environmental aspects of the space, but also balancing the human desire to be there with family members, which are their pets. And I would argue that a lot of the work that this commission has done, which again, I applaud, is for recreational purposes. That pergola is for people to come and picnic. The gardens are for people to come and do the recreation of gardening. Matera Cabin, this is all part of that space. So recreation is certainly part of their work as well.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments from members of the Conservation Commission? And are there any members of the public waiting online with their hands raised? Chuck, do you see anybody?
I don't. They would be at the top of the screen.
Okay. All right. And I haven't spoken yet, but I wanted to give everybody else a chance. Are we good? Susan?
Just Chuck, on a personal note for hunters here in Reading, I can tell you on 3 occasions, hunters have gutted their deer and left the guts just for whatever to enjoy. I don't think the responsible hunting that you are speaking of happens here in Reading. So just wanted you to be aware of that. And there is still a stand that is in an illegal area.
I can check that out. If the stands are tough, we've tried to deal with the police department with that. It's like if someone parked in the wrong spot, if I take that stand down, I may be liable also, because it's their personal property. So it's hard for the Conservation Commission to go out and take the stand. But I've heard of others taking the stand down and leaving a note or bringing it to the police department or doing something with it.
Mm-hmm.
But that seems to be not exactly what the Conservation Commission should do to remove these stands. But certainly can leave notes on them if they're in the wrong spot, try to get a hold of whoever's there, go out at the wrong time and then,
Maybe
you
it's
know.
a police department thing.
Yeah,
But I
it
have called them several times and
certainly could be.
Nothing.
I mean, I don't want, you know, any problems. We're trying to be fair.
Mm.
And, you know, and as fair goes, I know that everyone monitors what the hunters are doing. But the people that are walking dogs are getting breaks from everybody. And if we could deputize all the dog walkers to, and seriously, like it was your responsibility to
Yes,
take
sir.
notes and give fines and make sure nothing happens. And this, it would be a different conversation, but that's not happening. And we can't do that because it's that 5 and 10% that end up messing things up, or who left that bag there? And, you know, the people that tie the bags to the top of their cars and drive off and it falls off. I mean, you know, they have to realize that that's happened after a while, but still I see people driving down the road with a bag of whatever tied to their racks on their car for some reason. And it makes no sense. So we're, you know, I'm programmed by what I see, but based on this conservation land that I want to protect. But I haven't made my mind up. I think this is just a conversation. I appreciate that everybody's out there, and I think it was a really good point about being stewards and who's going to be out there if there are no one's walking a dog. So it's all interesting. I don't expect this to be the only conversation that the commission is going to have about Bear Meadow.
All right, I just want to make a couple of comments. I do not have a dog and I do walk in Bear Meadow. So, and I walk in the town forest. And I walk in Marion Woods. So, yeah, you don't know where Marion Woods is, huh? Well, explore Marion Woods. It's a new place you can walk your dog and it has parking. And the parking is where you call Lobbs Pond Mill or Lobbs Pond Mill. So if you park there, you can take your dog in Marion Woods and check that one out. Anyway, but the point is that I sat in on many conversations in the town forest committee when they were discussing rules for dog walking. And repeatedly it came up that there were some people who really don't like having dogs running up and putting their paws up on them and scaring their small children and knocking over elderly people who could break bones. And so part of me thinks it would be nice to have a place in town where people know they can go and they're not going to be encountering people walking dogs. And I know 90% of your dog people interactions are friendly, but you know, town forest committee had reports multiple times of people getting bitten by dogs. And you know, one dog bite is enough to really scare a child for a long time. Anytime they ever see a dog. So I kind of like the idea of having a place in town where people can go for a walk without being worried that they're going to run into a dog. And the reason we picked Bear Meadow was because of the woodcocks nesting there and the vernal pools there and stuff like that. So unfortunately, that means that Jean is right next to a lovely place to walk her dog. And now we're taking that away. So I understand that side of the question as well. Okay. I also walk in the town forest frequently, and even though there are doggy poop bags available and there are trash cans available, I see a lot of dog bags in places they shouldn't be. And there's a new piece of property that the conservation just purchased on Sanborn Lane, and somebody threw a dog bag over the railing into the stream onto our conservation land. We didn't purchase, we received as a gift. So, you know, people fling these things into the woods, they're hanging on tree branches. It really is not pleasant. And, you know, it would be nice to have a place where you could go for a walk in the woods and not worry about seeing plastic bags that you know what's inside of, and you don't really want to pick it up and stick it in your pocket and take it home with you to clean up. You know, those are some of my thoughts on this question. Nobody has addressed anything about some of the other stuff that we had lower down on the proposal. And one of the things that we talked about in that proposal was being more strict in the new Millet Sons Morgan property, while the vegetation grew in. Does anybody here have thoughts and comments on Millet Sons Morgan, or are we all focused on no dogs allowed in Bear Meadow? Conservation members or members of the public? Or Chuck?
Yeah. I'm still focused on dog pond number 1 and 2. So I'm hoping that they don't go into those ponds that are being developed in there, because
Oh, they will.
we are planting them with plants in it. And it takes quite a long time for that stuff to develop. So it'll be a couple of years. It might even be 3 years before, you know, it's robust enough to withstand, you know, constant, you know, walking on, I guess, or walking in and out on. So the new ponds have loose soil, and the vegetation will start to grow up, but it will solidify after a while. So, you know, maybe that's a good idea, but I would certainly not want to see any dogs in the pond. So I would say, you know, that might be something that we want to think about, to say, yeah, stay on the trail, pick up after yourself, but the ponds aren't for bathing, for dogs or for people.
We have a sign that says exactly that.
I can make up something. So we have money for
Graphics.
Bill, can you put up the text again? And this was on the website? This is where you found it, was on the website, Bill?
I didn't look, but I think it's on the website. I remember putting it up now. So
Yeah, it was on the website, so let me go back. Oh, did it go down? Oh, here it is. Okay.
Okay, so down near the bottom, we suggested at Millet Sons Morgan, stay on the paths for 3 years. And we mark that with corrugated signs to mark this restoration areas. So that sounds like you're agreeing with our suggestion, Chuck.
no, so I don't think that we need to like wordsmith this tonight. I think that to have the conversation, go back, work on it again, and then bring it to another meeting, you know, and then discuss what this is going to look like. Do I agree that now there's a lot of hope in that paragraph? So yeah, I hope that everyone stays on the paths, for sure.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
When you guys were doing the signs, at the end of Bear Meadow, where I live, we got notification in the mail that there was a meeting for it. Why didn't we get anything about this meeting? Cause I didn't know about it until like last week. Susan told me, and then somebody else told me. I had no idea about this meeting. So why aren't people notified about this so they can like state their case?
So usually the conservation, just like our regulations, we'll discuss the regulations, but when we're ready to make a vote, we'll notify other, you know, abutters and whatnot. But this is a little bit different because it's conservation land. We don't need to go to town meeting. We don't need to ask the select board.
So who put this?
Completely up to the Conservation Commission, what they do with their own land.
Okay, but who put the sign up? Is that the Conservation Committee?
The Bear Meadow signs,
Yeah.
we put those signs up.
Okay, so why weren't we notified? Is that?
Were you notified by that? Oh, because the signs are under a bylaw for the CPDC, and we had to go to the CPDC to get permission to put up the signs. And so that's why you were probably notified.
Just wondering. I think people should be notified about this, just so they can say their piece, or just make their feelings known.
That's a good point. I mean, maybe before we make a vote, the commission will consider, you know, putting in the paper or sending out mailing.
That would be a good idea.
We'd need a bigger room.
Yeah, you would.
Absolutely.
Doug,
Isn't that the point of notifying people to get everybody's input? But there is a list of dog owners in town.
no, there's a list of people who have registered their dogs.
Yeah.
That is
That would be a
not
good
all
spot
the
to start.
dog owners.
Right, but that would be a good spot to start,
Yeah.
but.
Okay, all right, but that would only call in the people who are
Yeah.
complaining about this dog thing. What about the people with small children who would like to not have dogs someplace? We would need to notify them too.
Yeah.
Right? We need to really let everybody know, not just only the dog owners. I do have one more thing I wanted to suggest, and I know we're running close on time, and I will.
Okay.
But another thought when we're talking about dogs and impact on wildlife is nesting season for woodcocks, vernal pool season for vernal pool organisms. I know that on the beaches, there are piping plovers that nest and they restrict off-road vehicles and stuff during certain months of the year, and then they allow them during other months of the year. And that's one possibility that we could reword this to say, no dogs allowed in Bear Meadow from March to September or something like that, which would cover the nesting season and the vernal pool season, but allow people in February to walk their dogs. And I just wanted to throw that out as a possible thing we could adapt, modify these regulations. And any thoughts on that?
I don't think we should get into wordsmithing if we're pretty much a consensus that this is a first pass.
Mhm.
Maybe we can deal with that in the next pass.
Yeah, so,
Close the discussion for tonight.
yeah. I think that we're not gonna close, so we're not gonna close, it's not a hearing, it's a discussion. So it's not closed, so anyone who doesn't have a chance to talk, we can talk about it later. But we should let everyone know when we'll bring this up again, but I don't think it's gonna be ready for the next meeting, maybe it should be a couple meetings out. And then right now, forgot your name, but Jean. Right now, it would only be something that you'd find on our agenda.
Well, yeah, once I found out about it, I looked it up.
Yeah, but I think like the suggestion that we would let people know if we were ready to vote, but it doesn't, sounds like there's a lot of good suggestions tonight and we have to look into it. But I personally don't want to turn this into what happened to the dog, into the town forest. Because I think when a lot of people came in, and so the Conservation Commission has to emphasize their regulations and their rulings and on the 8 interests of the acts, the 8 interests of the act and our own regulations. And it's different from being just someone who lives next to, a park. We're trying to protect animals and open spaces for, based on those 8 interests. And a lot of people don't understand, and I know that, I've been doing this a long time, and everyone expects to get a building permit, but no one understands that sometimes you need to get a conservation permit also. So I know that the conservation rules and regulations aren't very obvious to a lot of people. And the reason why we're doing it is not very obvious either. But, it is where we're supposed to deal from, is to kind of those 8 interests of the act. The protection of wildlife habitat is one of them, and that's what we're doing here.
No, I understand, dealt with conservation before, I understand that. I just think there needs to be some type of happy medium. I just don't think that it's kind of fair that you're just limiting Bear Meadow to like shut everything off for the dogs to save this one particular beautiful area. And I get it, out there a lot. It is absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful to take your dogs in a fall day. it's on a snowy day, it's absolutely beautiful. By the way, they did not mow this year, just so you know, they didn't mow the field.
That was on purpose.
Yeah, we did that on purpose.
Okay, but nobody, it was, nobody, I don't care, but, it is a beautiful area. I just think there needs to be some type of happy medium, because like I said, when you go out there as much as I do, and as much as I see these guys out there a lot, there's dogs. Once in a while, you run into somebody that's taking a nice casual walk, and people are very kind, and like, you pull your dog aside and they go. I mean, it's just a beautiful area out there. That's all I'm saying. It would be a sin and so sad.
Can you imagine how wonderful that area would be without the dogs scaring everybody off?
Enjoy it.
Are we talking about just the meadow, or are we talking about?
It's everything. Yeah, it's all of it. It's all of it. So,
But does
yeah,
it
we're-
need to be?
Probably does.
Yeah, I really think we need to wrap up this conversation, and we're not making any votes today.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, we should continue this in a month. And we'll talk about it again then.
Sure.
So 27th. Because there's a leap year.
But there was a part on there about the dog walkers that I think has more urgency to it.
In,
And what you're proposing here, I mean, you're like you said, we didn't talk about it, but I think that's something
we
that.
have it,
It's just so that if you pull the sheet.
Bill,
out
can you
a little-
slide it down a little bit?
I mean, it can wait a month, but when we talk about it next time, and we don't come to a decision on this Bear Meadow thing, I do think we should move forward on the
And the bikes.
bikes and the limit of 3 dog per walker, per dog
Mhm.
walker. That I completely agree with.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there was and I know I said I wanted to wrap this up, but there was a suggestion of not being different rules, different places. We said 3 dogs. I think Town Forest is planning to make it a limit of 2 dogs per dog walker. So maybe we should be consistent with whatever Town Forest
That's all
does.
part of reconsidering the
Yeah.
language.
So something to think about.
All right.
Information,
yeah.
town meeting, I believe will be voting in April on the town forest dog walking
Yes.
provision, so after that date, you'd have the exact language as a point of reference.
Before they vote, we'd have the language. Once they put it in the warrant, we would know the
Correct,
language.
but it is subject to change, of course, and
Well, true. That's true.
there's.
But also somebody was saying they're not allowing dog walkers in the town forest, and that's not really true. They're still allowed now. But after town meeting, that could change. Yeah.
Wrap it up.
Okay, so I think that was enough of that discussion, and we can move on. Oh, sorry. We can move on to the DPW meeting is supposedly March 5th. That
Thank
is
you.
Election Day. We have meetings on
We can
election.
still walk our dogs tomorrow.
You can. Nothing has changed yet.
Oh, look out for the hunters though.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do you think there will be a meeting on March 5th, even though it's an election day?
okay. What's that?
Do you think there will be a?
Yes, absolutely. That's
Thank you.
a night
Yes.
meeting. They're talking, the night meetings. This DPW meeting is an internal staff meeting.
Okay. All right. I won't be there.
Okay.
So is there somebody else from this commission who is available to attend the DPW meeting at 1 PM on Tuesday, March 5th?
Brian, are you gonna make it?
Yeah.
So Brian's gonna
Have an
be there.
appointment at 11.
Yeah.
You should be out by 1.
It's a
Okay.
15-minute meeting.
Walter, any chance you could make it on March 5th? And,
Looking at my calendar as we speak, I have a medical situation.
okay, so Walter won't be there
So Brian will have to hold the fort.
unless Andrew's available.
No, I've got an appointment that day.
Okay, all right, so Brian, it's you. Okay,
I can bring my evil twin and count as 2 people.
yeah, right. Okay, Waverly Road survey?
Yeah, just to update the commission, so we did the survey, it was found out that there's a shed over the property line where the person that offered the land to the Conservation Commission will reach out to the owner of the shed and asked them to move it. So there's a little hiccup in the plan at this moment. That shed has to be moved, or an accommodation would have to happen, which I don't know what that would be.
Before we can
Shed is
accept.
outside of the no-build zone.
What's that?
The shed is beyond the no-build zone as well.
Well, this is donated land. This is just over the property line, so there's no jurisdictional setbacks on this, so I don't know where it would fall, but I would think it would fall like 50 feet away from the wetland.
It's a property boundary issue.
Right, I just didn't.
I know what you're going, yeah, I don't think it's close enough, yeah, I think it's beyond 35 feet. So that's, yeah, I expected that in a couple meetings, but I think we're further out than that at this point.
Okay, so we won't spend any more money at this point?
To be continued, no, we don't have to spend any more money, the money's been spent.
Okay. The money's been spent for the survey, and we'll see whether we actually get a piece of property out of it or not, huh?
Well, I think they would get a piece of property out of it at the end of the day. I'm not sure. The last Sanborn Lane took 8 months.
Yeah.
To kind of work through.
And more compromises.
Yeah, some more compromises. So we'll see what happens. So I know that we have at least the homeowner helping with this situation. So we'll see. Next couple of weeks, I'll be able to give you another update on that.
Okay, administrators report?
Only to say that the conservation restriction for Grove Street is pretty close to being finalized, and the Conservation Commission will need to review it and sign the conservation restriction. Then it goes to the select board for their signature. And then we'll have that conservation restriction on lot 4 of Grove Street, which is next to the parking area. So.
Okay, where do we stand on getting some picnic tables for the pavilion up at the top of the community gardens? Did we want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, so I think that we have, with all the changes that have happened, the pavilions come in. There's some ARPA money that we wanted to spend. We still have some of that. We have some budget money left. And I wanted to ask to work with a couple commissioners on a priority list of how to spend that money. What we thought it was going to be spent for, and if that's still relevant, and then maybe to bring in some new items on it, such as one in particular, we always talked about a bike rack at Matera Cabin. And that just doesn't seem to make any sense. People have told me it's hard to get bikes up there. It's not really something that we can do. And that money could be spent on a picnic table. So that was the one change I was hoping to get passed and approved by the commission.
Okay, is that something we should talk about tonight and?
No, I'll
vote
present it
or?
to you when it's ready.
Okay, so that'll come later. Okay, and my only other note was thinking about whether maybe there should be some sort of porta potty at Matera Cabin now that it's getting so much use in the summer for gardening. Do we want to look into what it would cost to rent a porta potty up there, or is that something to talk about another day?
Yeah, so the committees that have porta potties and all that is like the recreation committee, and they get so much money, and in the millions, I don't know, or hundreds of thousands of dollars throughout the year. So they can afford these, and they have a lot of activity. I'm not sure that the Conservation Commission could afford a porta potty, but it would be a great ask for the new town manager or the select board to see if this would be a spot. I'm not sure I want a porta potty there. Maybe that's a conversation people have to have first. But because then what ends up happening, right? Like dawn to dusk turns into a pit stop for somebody because they know there's a porta potty there. But outside of all that, I think that has to be, all the numbers have to be presented to the commission, has to be on the agenda, and then we could discuss it and then make a decision.
And it was surprisingly expensive. I looked into it recently for an upcoming birthday party that we were considering having in my backyard, and decided not to do it. Very expensive.
Yeah. Well, I bet a lot of the cost is drop off and pickup. Besides, I think
Cleanup.
so a one-time use is gonna be more expensive per day than a week or a month.
Mhm. I
Um,
would agree that.
Yeah.
Could make sense. I
Yeah.
don't know, but
okay.
I was looking for one-time use.
Yeah, okay, that's all I have on my agenda. Anybody from the commission with other things you wanted to bring up? Bill?
Yeah, just quickly, kind of a quirky thing, I guess. Chuck, I've been having a heck of a time recently finding the Reading Conservation Commission standard replacement tree and shrub policy. I go to the Conservation Division and everything else is there, the hyperlinks, but it could just be me, but I'm having a heck of a time finding it. I finally found it this evening before the meeting because I wanted to look at it again by actually doing a search. And then it took me to the document. But I may be mistaken, but I recall that it used to be easier. There was a hyperlink that was right next to the
Yeah.
town of Reading regs, and I don't see that hyperlink anymore.
Yep, so when we work on the tree policy, it gets moved around and the person that I work with doesn't work with committees and doesn't run meetings and doesn't understand, I guess, how people might be looking for things. So I think that I can straighten that out tomorrow, but I didn't realize that that was moved or changed.
And I only bring it up because, like tonight, we have members of the public saying, well, how do you get notice of this? And of course, you said quite rightly, well, we post our agenda every week. But I feel like that tree and shrub policy, if I'm struggling to find it, I'm thinking of a member of the public, who might have a casual interest in.
It should be, I'm just gonna try to do it right now because I was on this other page.
I found the tree protocol.
Yeah.
That's the one about.
Yeah, the
DPW has to let us
DPW one
know.
is.
Yeah, the tree
DPW
protocol was up there.
Yeah.
Found that one.
Yep, found that one too, Martha, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so when I go to the Conservation Division page and I go to applications and permits at the top, and then I scroll down additional documents and forms, tree replacement policy, but that's kind of hidden. It's not on the main page. And
Okay,
I can see what you're saying. It might have been on the main page.
I guess that's what I'm saying, Chuck. I think
I don't know where it was though, but was
Yeah.
it part of the hyperlinks on the left-hand side?
All I'm suggesting is if it were possible to associate it with the town of Reading wetlands regulations, I just think that'd be a very logical place for it to be. Because it's an
Okay.
important policy to us. We discuss it a lot.
You're
have
asking too much.
Sorry,
Yeah.
if I'm asking too much, that's fine. Again, this is just a suggestion, not a.
Yeah. Well, but
No, it's a good suggestion. I,
members of the commission can't find it. How do we
That's a
expect the
problem.
public to know what it is?
yeah, this is not a one-off thing. Anytime anyone calls up and says, where's your meeting schedule? Where's your this? Where's your that? Or I'm having a hard, we try to make those changes, but this is something that's happened a lot where when we work on something, and you'll notice that we've modified it if you're looking at the new one. They just disappear and that, I don't know what happens, but I'll have to be on that. So anyone out there listening and any commission member, please feel free to edit or ask for edits and make comments on our Conservation Division page. And I asked Jean Delios one time, why do we have a Conservation Commission page? I go, that's confusing. And she felt like it was very necessary, and all boards have both pages here.
Oh,
But I think that they just had a lot of extra, might have been part of the contract when they first got it, something like that. But it is, it's damn confusing. I mean, where do you put stuff? And I started loading up the Conservation Division page, and you'll notice that CPDC kind of goes towards their member page for a lot of their information.
well, maybe there should be cross-reference links, agendas over here. If you want forms and applications, go to this link, because once you get into Conservation Commission page.
You know what I'm gonna do?
Realize there's a
Just not gonna
Conservation
accept
Division.
any comments like that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you my only comment would be, I'm gonna get rid of the Conservation Commission page. Because
Put it
then there
all
will be
in
no confusion.
Yeah.
And I can change the division page to both.
That works.
Yeah.
That works very well.
And I think it just has your email addresses and things like that. And there was something quirky like, oh, we can't show the calendar on both pages, it can only be shown on one.
Yeah, we'll put the Conservation Commission within the Conservation Division. How's that?
You know what I'm gonna do? We're gonna finish up this Birch Meadow or Bear Meadow dog policy. And then that might be the next.
Yeah.
You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna end this meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so all we have left is minutes for approval. I sent Chuck a comment this afternoon. Brian sent Chuck some corrections.
Several comments, yeah.
Did anybody else have corrections you need to send in?
What I sent was really minor.
Okay,
Is that yours? I thought that was your presentation for SWAC. I was gonna fit in.
No.
okay. Any motions about minutes?
We move to accept the minutes as amended.
Tony moved to accept the minutes.
I second that.
Brian second.
We just say yes.
Bill McKenna in favor?
Walter Talbot's in favor.
Yes.
In favor.
Rambo in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. 6-0-0. Okay,
Yeah, good.
That's feel good.
how about
I didn't
move
actually.
adjourned? And we have a motion to adjourn at 9:10.
9:10.
Yes.
Right.
All in favor, raise both hands. As always.
All right, Bill, are you proud of us?
This is fantastic.
Don't get used to it.
I won't, but this is fantastic.
All right, thank you, Walter.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
So long,
Bye,
good
Bill.
night.
Bye.
Good night.
All right, so
All right.
we're there.
We are.
Is the, no. Let me shut this